Good morning, Britain. Tragedy at the beach as 2 children die. A 17-year-old boy and 12-year-old girl were among 10 people pulled from the water off Bournemouth beach, but they died later in hospital.
Half-term horror on a packed Bournemouth beach. The details are still sketchy, but a man has now been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter.
Rishi Sunak goes to Europe for help to stop the boats, telling fellow leaders at a summit that illegal migration should be the continent's top priority. But back here at home, he faces a challenge from Boris Johnson.
Yeah, the former Prime Minister says he has now handed over all of his COVID WhatsApps and notebooks. Number 10 now have 10 hours to decide whether to pass them to the COVID inquiry.
The truth is out there, but maybe less of it than we hoped. NASA reveals how many UFO sightings aren't unidentified at all and gives them a new name.
Yes! Who are you?
George Knight.
Plus, from Queen and Country to the Queen Vic, Bond star Colin Salmon tells us why he swapped Hollywood for EastEnders to be closer to home and family.
And much like yesterday, it is a bit of a slow start to the day. The cloud will gradually peel back throughout today with increasing amounts of sunshine, particularly in the west. All that and more coming up on Good Morning Britain.
Thursday, 1st of June, 2023. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Ben Shephard and Charlotte Hawkins.
Hello there, good morning. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Welcome to the programme.
Quick question. Is the truth actually out there,
Well, it seems
Charlotte
not.
Hawkins?
It seems there's more FOs than UFOs, as in, does that make sense?
No?
No, because they're not
You need to
unidentified.
tell me what that means.
They're not unidentified flying objects, because NASA have said for the vast majority of them,
Please
they
tell me what the
know
FO stands for.
what
I'm still,
these
I can't concentrate on
what
anything.
these flying objects...
Is it just me?
No.
Flying? Oh, it's the flying objects.
Unidentified flying objects, but they know what the vast majority of them are, so they're actually flying objects. FOs rather than UFOs.
OK.
That's my logic. Does that not make sense?
Had the same ring to it.
No. I'm so glad you...
Actually, they've
you
clarified that. They've actually called them now unidentified, anomalous, easy for me to say, phenomena. Should have just stuck with the other one, shouldn't I?
UAPs. Is that close to OAPs?
Well...
Can you explain them to me as well?
So...
They're not flying, are they?
They are the ones that they don't know what they are. And those ones are 2 to 5% of the total database. They still don't know what they are. All the rest they've managed to identify.
So they had this big panel yesterday to try and be a little bit more open about the sort of stuff that they found.
Yes.
We've got the UFO bros joining us a little bit later on.
They're the experts.
2 Americans that go UFO hunting. They've been UFO hunting with Demi Lovato.
I know. They know their stuff.
I didn't know it was so easy to get pop stars to go out with you. Like, do you want to fancy going hunting some UFOs? Yeah, I'll cut. I mean, you know, get anybody to do that.
So I wonder what they're going to make of this, because are they going to be disappointed that there probably aren't quite as many UFOs as they would have hoped?
Or is it going to be, no, it's great that they're moving around?
Or they're going to say, there are definitely some UFOs. What are those
Stuff
things?
that they can't explain.
Yeah.
Love to know whether you've ever seen a UFO, you think you've seen a UFO, whether you were mistaken and then you worked out eventually that actually it wasn't a UFO, it was just a balloon stuck in a tree or something like that. Have you ever seen one, Alex? Have you been...
Never seen any UFO.
There's quite a lot down the southwest, down Bristol way, though, surely. I've been distracted by the balloon. There's always so many balloons at night.
There's always hot air balloons.
There's a lot of them. But you've not seen one when you've been out
I've
and about?
not seen one myself.
No?
I'm not saying they're not true. I've not seen one myself.
Sean?
Sitting on the fence there, Alex. No, I haven't seen them.
But do you think that there could be something out there, or are you just thinking, nah?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
No.
You think no, there's not?
I don't think so. I don't know why I'm thinking about this
Sean,
too
but
much.
why is it so difficult
there are no
for you to
UFOs.
answer, Sean? You're like a politician.
Yeah,
No,
you've got
it's
something
like
to
a really
hide.
important
You've got
does.
something to hide.
Yes, I'm an alien.
You are, oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we know that.
Do get in touch with us. Have you had one of these experiences of a UFO, or maybe you can explain the FO.
Yeah, but it made sense to me anyway.
Just making me
talking about acronyms, how do you... They've got questions now. This is in the paper today. There are life-changing questions, apparently, that we all want answering.
Right.
And the number one is, what is an NFT?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A non-fungible token.
Exactly. So you know what one is, but apparently it's the kind of term that gets bandied around and people say, well, what does that actually mean?
I know what it stands for. I cannot, and I've had it explained to me on numerous occasions. Can I really explain what an NFT is? I don't think I can, really.
Isn't it that one that's the digital representation of something? So you buy it in digital form?
My son tried to explain it to me. He knows what an NFT is, but I...
Because he's how old is he now?
Yeah.
Cruz is how old?
He's 13.
30. So he's in the right age to understand that sort of stuff.
How do I use ChatGPT? That's another one. What are the rules of cricket? What exactly is a black hole? I mean, there are all sorts here.
The rules of cricket is still very, very complicated.
Even to those people who like cricket.
Yeah. A black hole is easier to explain than the rules of cricket.
So, anyway, all the important questions. Maybe we should try and answer some of these throughout the programme this morning, just to clear things up.
And whether...
information at the same time.
Men and women can just be friends. Alex is coughing. He doesn't think that's the case.
Sorry.
Clearly. Can men and women just be friends? There's a new TV series exploring that, and there's the question, age-old question is actually, is it possible for men and women just to be friends, or is there always an element that means there's something more to it?
I mean, we're friends, aren't we?
Yeah, but I've had to ask you to back off a bit every now and again.
That's what the restraining order was for.
I know, absolutely. You know, it's a debate that we're having a little bit later on as well. Can you be just good friends with people of another gender?
It's a good question. And listen, get in touch. Lots of you getting in touch on this already. We'll be talking about it later. But let's turn to our main news this morning, because a tragedy has happened that 2 children have died after being pulled from the sea off Bournemouth Beach. Dorset police say 10 people were recovered from the water following an incident yesterday afternoon. A 12-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy sustained critical injuries and later died in hospital.
A man in his 40s who police say was on the water at the time of the incident has been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. Jonathan Swain is at Bournemouth Beach for us this morning. Goodness me, Jonathan, what a tragic day on Bournemouth, on what a beautiful, I'm sure, sunny day when everyone was there having a lovely time over half-term for something like this to happen. Do we know the details?
Good morning, Ben. As you say, half-term holidays for many people. It was a warm day yesterday, around 23 degrees Celsius. The beach was packed here yesterday, not now, but yesterday. Hundreds, if not thousands of people enjoying the beach, and also out there enjoying the water too. The sea was pretty calm. We've got some surfers out there around the pier out there this morning. But the atmosphere, the carefree atmosphere, Ben and Charlotte, changed at around 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon because some swimmers came out of the water saying there's a group of people who appeared to be in difficulty towards the end of the pier there. That's when this rescue operation swung into action. Lifeguards went out on jet skis. The lifeboat, the RNLI, were called as well. They went out on the boat to search for the water in the water as well. The beach was then closed. People were then told to leave the beach. The first of 2 air ambulances arrived and landed on the beach as well. Lifeguards could then be seen resuscitating a couple of the people, and then people were just told to move away, as you'd expect, and were later told that a 17-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl later died in hospital from critical injuries. We weren't given any more word on that from the police. They did issue a statement saying that their thoughts with the families of those who have sadly died, and they are, though, appealing for witnesses to come forward. As I say, this beach would have been packed here yesterday. They want people to come forward with videos maybe to show what happens, but the police later confirmed as well that a man in his 40s was later arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. Well, the beach is no doubt going to be busy again today, Ben. Nice weather again during half-term holidays. Just goes to show that even though the weather is warm and the seas may look relatively calm, still a lot of hidden dangers out there.
Jonathan, thank you.
Well, that is our top story this morning. Now here's Sean with the rest of the day's news. Morning, Sean.
Morning, Charlotte. Thanks very much indeed. The Prime Minister will today urge European leaders to work closely together to make illegal migration the continent's top priority. Well, our chief correspondent, Richard Beresford, is in Dover for us. Good morning to you, Richard. So Rishi Sunak says he wants an international effort, is how he says it. He explains it, to stop small boats crossing the channel, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's going to say that at a meeting today, Sean, of the European political community. They're gathering in Moldova. It's a forum, if you like, of EU leaders outside of the European Union. And Britain's part of that, and it's able to go and ask for help. And Mr. Sunak certainly wants help with the small boats. He's made it a big plank of his prime ministership that he stops them from crossing the channel. The problem is, despite the tough talk, despite new legislation, despite the threats to remove people to Rwanda, they keep on coming. In the last week alone, 313 migrants have crossed the channel. The last boat to arrive on the Kent coast was on Sunday. The weather has actually been pretty foul since then in terms of conditions at sea, making it quite difficult, so those numbers will have been restricted. Whilst in Moldova, we understand the Prime Minister will be speaking with the government there about getting a new agreement to return foreign nationals to that country if they've come illegally here to the UK. If you take a look at the stats, you can see how it fits into the bigger picture. Moldova, 45,755 migrants arrived in the UK via small boats in the last year. 4 of those migrants arrived from Moldova, so not really the biggest of issues. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister also expected to announce today a similar deal with Georgia is coming into a force. 300 migrants arrived on small boats last year from Georgia. It's ranked about 11th for small boat arrivals here in the UK. We also expect Rishi Sunak to announce a deal with Bulgaria on intelligence sharing cooperation to target the gangs, Sean, that are bringing people here from Eastern Europe into the UK.
Richard, thank you. Also this morning, ITV has asked the barrister to lead an external review of the facts surrounding Philip Schofield's departure from this morning. The announcement was made in a letter from Chief Executive Dame Carolyn McCall to the Culture Secretary, Ofcom and the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee. Philip Schofield resigned from ITV last week after admitting to an affair with a younger male colleague. More than 1 million NHS staff in England will start to receive increased salaries from today as part of the government's latest pay deal. Eligible staff, including nurses, paramedics and 999 call handlers, will receive a 5% pay rise, as well as a one-off payment for last year and the so-called NHS backlog bonus for this year. 3 people, including 2 children, have been killed and at least 14 people injured in an aerial attack on Kyiv. Officials say Russian forces hit the capital overnight, damaging apartment blocks and a medical clinic. Mike Pence, who served as Donald Trump's vice president, is set to join the race for the White House. Pence is expected to launch his bid to win the nomination for the Republican Party next week, putting him in direct competition with his former boss, who is widely expected to win the nomination. Well, the government has until 4 o'clock today to hand Boris Johnson's messages, notebooks and diaries to the COVID-19 inquiry or face a legal dispute. Our political correspondent, Louisa James, is in Downing Street for us. Louisa, good morning to you. Well, we have been reporting on this for most of the week, haven't we? Now Boris Johnson has waded into this ongoing saga.
Yeah, it is another twist in this kind of tug of war between, on the one side, Baroness Hallett, chair of the COVID inquiry, who wants this collection of WhatsApps and notebooks and diaries to be handed over unedited. And on the other side, the Cabinet Office, who say they want to take certain bits out first, which they say are irrelevant because they relate to people's personal lives. Now, the other thing the Cabinet Office was saying is that they didn't actually have all of Boris Johnson's messages. That has now changed because Boris Johnson's team say he has handed everything over and he wants it to be passed to the inquiry. So it is, some might say, a bit of a power move from him, saying, I've got nothing to hide, and putting the pressure firmly on the Cabinet Office and ultimately Rishi Sunak before today's deadline of 4 p.m. And that pressure is growing from all sides.
I can't see how people are going to have confidence in the inquiry if the government is deciding what material does and doesn't get released. You know, it might be embarrassing to particular ministers if some of these messages get disclosed, but it's not really about those ministers. It's about trying to get to the truth for the sake of people who lost loved ones and want to understand what happened, and also to ensure that we learn the right lessons.
We saw Gavin Barwell there saying it might be embarrassing for certain people, and although the focus has been on Boris Johnson, these messages actually involve 40 people in total, including current cabinet ministers and Rishi Sunak himself. That is why Number 10 are being accused of a cover-up, something they deny. It is also why some people say that all of this back and forth has a lot more to do with the bad blood between Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. Ultimately, though, what this means in the end is that it could delay the COVID public inquiry if this all goes to the courts, and that means that people might have to wait a long time to get the answers they desperately want.
Louisa, thank you. I think we'll be reporting on this tomorrow, won't we? See you then. Now, all adults in Northern Ireland will be considered potential organ donors from today unless they choose to opt out or are in an excluded group. Now, the new law is known as Dahi's Law, named after 6-year-old Dahi McGowan, who has been waiting 5 years for a new heart. Lee Comley has his report.
Born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, Dahi McGowan came into this world fighting for a chance at life. His condition means the left side of his heart did not form correctly and therefore doesn't work. At just 18 months old, his family were told he would need a transplant. Since then, his parents have put up a relentless campaign to change the law around organ donation in Northern Ireland to help find their son a donor. And now, a new law means all adults in Northern Ireland will be considered potential organ donors unless they choose to opt out or are in an excluded group.
I'm not sure he knows yet quite how much of a difference he and his family have made across Northern Ireland, because frankly he has made history.
Today, Dahi's law in honour of the 6-year-old will come into effect.
Today is a momentous day for the organ donation community and for my family and Dahi. Dahi's law comes into effect and we couldn't be happier. We've fought so hard to get to this day. Thankfully, the British government stepped in.
Across Northern Ireland, around 90% of people support organ donation, but only 50% have signed the organ donor register. Around 10 to 15 people in the country die each year waiting for a transplant. Today marks 5 years from when Dahi was placed on the organ donor waiting list. He and his proud parents hope his new law will help him find the new heart they've waited so long for. Lee Comley, Good Morning Britain.
Now, resources in England are at breaking point and not ready for more heat waves this summer, according to a new report. Researchers from the London School of Economics say the government must stop cutting public budgets if England is going to adapt to extreme heat events. But the government says they are well prepared for any future heat waves. The report coincides with the launch of a new high-temperature alert system by the UK Health Security Agency and the Met Office.
As a scientist, I do see the data, I do see the projections. I have looked at this from last summer, and I'm very worried that the government isn't taking this seriously and isn't fully equipped to understand the vulnerabilities that people are exposed to. And if this isn't taken seriously, we're going to be suffering from the impacts in some really traumatic ways.
Now, have a look at this. Police in Georgia have released footage of a car flying through the air after hitting the ramp of a tow truck. The crash was captured on the body camera of a police officer who was attending an incident on the other side of the road. A 21-year-old woman was injured, but miraculously survived the crash.
It's a flying object.
We identify that, don't we?
Yeah.
And in UFO news, NASA has revealed it's seen a spike in reported sightings of UFOs. A panel of experts set up last year to investigate unidentified flying objects say they've received around 800 sightings, but only a small fraction are truly unexplained. So, yeah, does that make them FOs or IFOs? Doesn't have the same ring to it, does it?
It doesn't quite, does it?
No.
Sean, thanks very much for that. People are getting in touch, actually, with their experience of them. Nick says personal experience of 2 UFOs, along with 6 others while I was serving in the RAF in 1979 at a large airbase in the southwest. I reported them through official channels, interviewed. Nothing ever heard again about the incident.
The other thing that they're saying, then, is NASA is saying that there's quite a lot of stigma attached to pilots reporting these things in case they get laughed at, saying it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's often RAF pilots, RAF officers that have been out and about and been flying through the night that see these things, isn't there?
Yeah, and you just don't know. There's one here, there was a pilot and a co-pilot flying near Virginia Beach, and they were convinced that they'd flown past a UFO. They turned around, they went back to look at it to get a closer look. Turned out It was a Bart Simpson balloon.
See, Alex, it's
There
always
you
the
go.
balloons.
Told you.
Those
balloons in
pretty balloons.
Bristol.
It's the balloons in Bristol causing all these issues. The weather's looking good, though, isn't it?
It is actually, and as well as looking at today's forecast, in a second we're also going to have a look at the summer forecast, which is quite interesting. Let's take a look right now.
Feeling inside from Boxed, proud sponsors of weather on Good Morning Britain.
Well, let's start with today first, and it's looking pretty good. However, it's another fairly slow start out there at the moment. A fair bit of cloud cover that will burn back throughout the course of the day, much like it did yesterday. The best of the sunshine and the warmest spells of sunshine will be out towards the west. Now, the satellite picture doesn't show a great deal of cloud cover at the moment. It's not showing up that cloud cover very clearly, but as we run the sequence for today, you can actually see where the cloud cover is at the moment. It's fairly extensive in places. Can't rule out a few bits of drizzle here and there, but that will be very short-lived. It burns back through the afternoon, as you can see, brighter skies out towards the west with highs of 22, maybe 23 degrees Celsius possible. If you are going to be out and about, make sure to slap on a bit of sun cream as well, because UV levels will be rising, particularly over the coming days. But now let's take a look at fortunes for the summer. So the Met Office have released their summer contingency forecast. And whilst we can't use it for our day-to-day forecast, so you and I, it's actually aimed at the government for contingency planning. So, for instance, the energy sector find it really useful. You know, if it was going to be particularly windy, obviously that would be great for sustainable, renewable energy. But let's start by taking a look at the predictions for temperature. And I know Sean in the news was actually talking about the new heat alert system and also the worries for more heat waves. Well, that's quite possible as we head through the next 3 months. So there's just a 5% chance at the moment that summer will be on the cool side. 50% chance near average, so still quite a big chance that it'll be relatively normal, but 45% chance that it will be on the hot side, so temperatures above average for the time of year. And this probably isn't a surprise with a warming climate and the fact that for England in particular, we've had our 5 warmest years on record since 2003. Let's take a look at our chances for rainfall this summer. And we know off the back of last summer with the droughts, hosepipe bans, well, it wouldn't be great news if it was particularly dry. 15% chance that we could see it being drier than normal. But you can see the projections really are for it to be fairly average. Now let's take a look at the current situation in Europe. And we're talking about trends here. And at the moment, we've got high pressure up towards the northwest, low pressure down towards the south. And that's why if you know anyone that's gone on holiday in Europe, southern Europe in particular, where you can see it has been relatively unsettled. They've seen some flooding across parts of Italy and Spain, and that is likely to be the case as we head through the next few days. We've got the finer weather here, and if we take a look now at what we're expecting that to kind of predict, really, with that high pressure up towards the north, low pressure in the south, it's going to create an east-south easterly airflow, so that would have warmer air coming in at this time of year from that particular direction, and also up towards the UK. It will keep us on the drier side with wetter weather continuing down across parts of southern Europe. So you may want to think about where you take your summer holiday. For the weather in detail where you are, go to itv.com/weather.